The day Alina Rahman signed the marriage papers, her hands did not tremble because of love, they trembled because it felt like she was signing away the last piece of her freedom to save the people she loved. The room was too bright, the daylight pouring in through tall windows as if the sun itself was watching her sacrifice. Across from her sat a quiet man with tired eyes and a little girl clutching his sleeve, a man she barely knew, a man the world had already labeled as nothing special. And yet, that ordinary man was about to change her life in ways she could never imagine. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles life sometimes hides in plain sight, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching hearts that need them. Alina had never imagined her life would come to this. Just months ago, she was the pride of her family, the eldest daughter who carried everyone's hopes like a crown she never asked to wear. But her father's business had collapsed under crushing debt, her younger sibling's education was hanging by a thread, and the house they had lived in for years stood on the brink of being taken away. Every door she knocked on closed with polite regret, every relative offered sympathy instead of help, and time ran out faster than she could fight. That was when the proposal came, not wrapped in romance, but in necessity. A distant family acquaintance introduced her to Faris Iqbal, a widower with a small daughter, a man known for his silence and simple life. He was not rich, not influential, not someone anyone would envy marrying. But he had one thing Alina desperately needed, financial stability, just enough to pay off her father's debts and keep her family afloat. The condition was simple and painfully clear, a marriage of convenience. The first time she saw Faris, she noticed how he barely spoke, how his presence felt like a shadow in the room. He wasn't cold, just distant, as if life had taken something from him that he never got back. His daughter, Hira, hid behind him, her wide eyes observing Alina like she was a stranger stepping into a story she didn't belong in. And perhaps she didn't. The wedding was small, almost invisible, like something meant to be forgotten. No music echoed, no laughter filled the air. It felt more like a transaction than a celebration. Yet, beneath the quiet, something unspoken lingered, something Alina couldn't name. Life after the marriage was exactly what she expected, and yet, strangely, not. Faris was respectful, never intrusive, never demanding. He gave her space, treated her with a kind of careful kindness that felt unfamiliar. There were no grand gestures, no attempts to win her over, just quiet acts of consideration. A cup of tea left by her door when she skipped meals, a repaired light bulb before she even noticed it was broken, a silent understanding that she needed time. But the house carried a heaviness. It wasn't just grief from his late wife, it was something deeper, something unspoken. The neighbors whispered, the shopkeepers watched him with curious eyes, and Alina often felt like she had stepped into a life with chapters missing. Hira, the little girl, became the first crack in Alina's guarded heart. The child rarely spoke, but her presence was soft and constant. Slowly, she began to follow Alina around the house, watching her cook, sitting beside her quietly. One afternoon, when the sunlight filtered gently through the windows, Hira placed her tiny hand over Alina's and whispered a single word that echoed louder than anything else, "Mama." It wasn't planned, it wasn't forced, but it shattered something inside Alina, replacing it with a warmth she hadn't expected. Days turned into weeks, and Alina started noticing things that didn't fit the image of a poor, ordinary man. Faris worked long hours, yet money never seemed tight. He dressed simply, yet everything he owned was of quiet quality. People greeted him with respect, not pity. And sometimes, late at night, she would hear him speaking on the phone in a tone that didn't match the man she thought she knew, firm, authoritative, almost powerful. Curiosity began to grow into suspicion. Who was this man, really? One afternoon, while cleaning a rarely used room, Alina stumbled upon something that changed everything. Hidden behind a locked drawer she accidentally managed to open was a stack of documents, legal papers, business contracts, financial records that told a completely different story. Faris wasn't poor. Not even close. He owned properties, investments, and a business network that extended far beyond what anyone knew. The man she had married out of desperation wasn't struggling, he was quietly wealthy. The revelation hit her like a storm. Anger, confusion, betrayal, all tangled inside her chest. Why would he lie? Why would he let her believe she was marrying into a life of simplicity when the truth was so different? That evening, when Ferris returned home, the air felt heavier than ever. The sunlight had faded into a deep orange glow, casting long shadows across the room. Alina confronted him, her voice shaking not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had discovered. And for the first time, Ferris broke his silence. He told her about his past, about how wealth had once defined his life, how people surrounded him not for who he was but for what he had. He spoke of betrayal from those he trusted, of losing his wife in a tragedy that left him questioning everything, of choosing a simpler life not because he had to, but because he needed to. He had hidden his wealth not out of deceit, but out of fear, fear of being used again, fear of losing what little genuine connection he had left. And then he said something that made Alina's heart stop. He knew about her situation before the marriage. He knew she was desperate, that her family needed help. But he also saw something else in her, a strength, a sincerity that he hadn't seen in years. He offered the marriage not as a transaction, but as a chance, for both of them. A chance to build something real, even if it started with a lie neither of them fully understood. Alina didn't know what to feel. The anger faded into something more complex, something heavier. She realized that while she had entered the marriage to save her family, Ferris had entered it to save himself, from loneliness, from mistrust, from a world that had once taken everything from him. As days passed, the truth began to reshape everything between them. The walls slowly came down, not all at once, but in quiet, meaningful moments. Conversations grew longer, silences became comfortable instead of awkward, and laughter, rare at first, began to find its place in their home. Alina saw Ferris not as the man she thought she married, but as the man he truly was, flawed, guarded, but deeply kind. And Ferris saw Alina not as someone who needed saving, but as someone who chose to stay, even after knowing the truth. Their relationship didn't transform overnight into a fairy tale. It grew slowly, like something real, something earned. Through shared struggles, through healing old wounds, through learning to trust again. And somewhere along the way, love, quiet, unexpected, and undeniable, found its way into their lives. Before we reach the end, take a moment to comment and share your thoughts. Would you have made the same choice as Alina? Would you have stayed after discovering such a secret? The final turning point came on a bright morning when the sunlight felt warmer than usual, when Hira ran into the room with laughter that no longer carried hesitation. Alina stood by the window, watching a life she once thought she didn't belong to, now feeling like home. Ferris joined her, standing quietly beside her, as he always did. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything they had been through, everything they had become. He didn't need to say anything, and neither did she. Because some truths don't need words. They had both entered the marriage carrying broken pieces of themselves. And somehow, together, they had built something whole. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and engage with the video. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need hope, who need to believe that even the most unexpected beginnings can lead to something beautiful. Because sometimes, the person we least expect, becomes the reason we believe in love again.